everyone, back for another update. Today is Sunday, May 4th, 2025. I'm on a short hike today as I continue to prepare for my upcoming long distance bike ride. The proposed route will take me from here to Springfield, Missouri on the first leg. And planning on leaving within a couple days, and I haven't been doing much lately, just resting up, preparing my body for this upcoming longer ride. And as you see, the leaves are just about completely out, emerged. What I'm going to talk about here is I did have the Zoom call with the group of people associated with Jennifer Lorenzi, and the topic of discussion was carbon dioxide. She had mainly it involved the panelists, and the general audience didn't participate this time, so I just got to listen in on the call this time, and they talked about carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere and how it was a chemist who lives in Hawaii that she had a discussion with, where they get the observations for atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. And the discussion was about the oceans being a vast reservoir for carbon dioxide, and that it actually, sum it up in a nutshell, the increase in CO2 has not been caused by man. As a matter of fact, it was brought out that whatever CO2 is being added to the atmosphere by man, most if not all of it's being sucked up by the oceans anyway. So then if that's the case, where's this increase coming from? It's easy to point the finger at mankind as the culprit because of Industrial Revolution. Where is all this increase coming from then? Well, coming from the oceans. Oceans, because they've warmed since 1850 because of, I think it's Henry's Law was brought out. Carbon dioxide changes with temperature as far as how the ability for the oceans to hold carbon dioxide changes as temperature of the water changes, meaning that if it's warmer, it gives out more carbon dioxide. It can't hold as much. And I agree with that. It makes total sense. However, I did some additional research. I have a book published in the 1970s on climate called The Weather Machine by Nigel Calder. And in the book, he has a chart of carbon dioxide levels from 1958 to, I think it was 1974 in the book. And I compared that chart with the chart that was put out on her blog, published by NOAA, and that chart goes up to levels, I think it was 2024. And what I noticed, I compared the two charts, The chart in the book by Nigel Calder did not match the chart that NOAA has out now. It wasn't a huge discrepancy, but it wasn't an exact match either. So the difference of parts per million was, the book had levels 3 parts per million lower than the chart now, starting in 1958. And then I was able to go up to 1974, and the discrepancy grew to 5 parts per million lower in the book from 1970s to the current chart. So what they're putting, one chart or the other, is not true entirely. Either they adjusted the data upwards since then in levels to make it look like the levels are higher than they really are. So this causes me to call into question what NOAA's putting out as far as CO2 levels in the atmosphere. Are they telling us the truth? Is that chart truthful that they published? Because they talked about a curve in the discussion of where CO2 levels were increasing by 0.9 part per million per year, and then it increased to 3 parts per million a year in more recent times, meaning the increase has gotten more rapid in the atmosphere of carbon dioxide. Of course, they brought out the person she was conversing with, the chemist, pointed out that parts per million, going from 310 to 420 is really minuscule in the whole scheme of things. You think of a stadium with 1 million seats in it, and you have 100 more people walk in. Hypothetically, you only got 300 people in the whole stadium with 1 million seats, and another 100 people walk in. Is there really going to be an appreciable difference? But there's another call coming up in May. I'm going to be on my bike tour. I did sign up to be part of it. I think it's May 24th, and this time discussion is going to be ice and its role in climate. I also commented on her blog that they're talking about couldn't understand why in the last ice age, what was responsible for the melting of the ice in such a short period of time. I've talked about this in prior videos, pointing out that changes in the sun were likely responsible, solar output, and the Milankovitch theories, which I've also talked about, don't really explain the rapid descent and the rapid transitions between interglacials and ice ages. Milankovitch theory is a very gradual process taking, in many cases, tens of thousands of years. And granted, 10,000 years ago, the Earth was tilted more favorably for warmer conditions. As far as the axial tilt being 24.3 near the max, meaning more sun in the summertime in the polar regions. But does that really matter enough to rapidly bring us out of an ice age? I did additional research, and I mentioned this solar scientist who is deceased in previous videos. I decided to go back through my YouTube history, sifting through hundreds of videos I've watched since then to find this person's videos. Finally found it. His name is, I'll have to give you the link to the channel, or at least spell it out if you don't have it with me. But he feels that the Milankovitch theories, and I'm in full agreement, do not explain the ice ages. He brought out in the video I watched that the sun, there's no way the sun could be responsible for it, as far as the angle of the sun. He brought out that, and I agree, that the only thing that could be explain the rapid transitions would be significant changes in the sun. Because Jennifer Morency came back and said she felt that it was the Milankovitch theory that totally explained the trigger for the ice ages and interglacials. That's what she said. She tried to tell me that there was no evidence of a significant change in the sun when the last ice age ended. So I did additional research to verify or dispute that claim. And like I say, I was compelled to find this scientist who's deceased, unfortunately, now. And the first video, I finally found his channel. It took me 5 hours of searching. And the first video I pulled up to watch, he brought out the very thing about the 10 isotopes, and brought out a chart in the video that showed around the time of the transition into the interglacial, the sun, the cosmic ray count suddenly dropped right around that period, which would indicate a significant change in solar activity to being more active. She tried to tell me there was no change around that time in the sun. The chart clearly showed that it was a huge change. I have not answered her yet because I didn't want to answer her until I had some solid research under my belt to verify that there is direct evidence that the sun changed in its output around that time. That chart that came up on the video I watched from the Antarctica ice cores shows that the end of the last ice age, cosmic ray count significantly fell, which would indicate that the sun, of what I've been talking about, came out of a dormant state and went into its present day mode of higher levels of activity in a sudden jump. So what does that entail for our future climate? Well, this scientist brought out that the sun is surrounded by a dense field of plasma, and that blocks a lot of the cosmic rays off when it's surrounding the sun. It's a dense layer, but when the sun goes into a dormant phase is when that layer is burnt up, gone, and the sun suddenly flips like a switch into a phase of dormancy, where solar output gets reduced by 70%, and that leads to 80% less precipitation for the Earth, he brought out. So during the Ice Ages, precipitation was down by 80% worldwide. And obviously that would make sense. Less heat, less evaporation, less precip overall. So when we think about it, the solar scientists, I'll have to give you the name and spell it out. I don't know how to do links. I know I'm backwards, but I'm going to try to get the name of the scientist. He's deceased again, unfortunately, now. But he feels that by the 2050s, the Earth is going to be facing potential ice age conditions. Of course, the timeline could be wrong. But he's going on information taken from the Greenland and Antarctica ice cores. And that he feels that once this happens, all areas north of 40 degrees latitude, the agriculture will shut down at that point, worldwide, both hemispheres. So I am going to address this to the group. I don't know if anybody's going to listen because it sounds too radical. They all, even for them, that this is even a possibility. I'm going to devote at least part of this channel now to continuing the work of this person who's now no longer alive and putting the message out there that mankind needs to prepare for the sun going into hibernation in the near future. And the effects of that worldwide that are going to be, within a short time that happens, the climate could go from being what it is now to ice age conditions. And he brought out the little ice age was a drop in the bucket compared to what will happen if the sun goes totally in hibernation. You're talking about a 70% reduction in solar energy coming to the Earth. There would still be some energy, still some weak plasma, but he also pointed out that 70% of the stars in our galaxy operate in the default mode, where they're not surrounded by the dense plasma, like the sun is right now. 70% of the stars in our galaxy operate in a default mode, they call it, where by the standards now that we see the sun would be in hibernation. It would put out 70% less energy. What I pointed out, though, is the Milankovitch theory can still be a catalyst, but right now, Milankovitch theory alone could not explain how we were in an ice age in the first place, 30,000 years ago, because two of the cycles favored more warmth. And only one favored being colder, which was the the tilt of the Earth's axis didn't reach the maximum tilt until 10,000 years ago, which was around the time the Ice Age ended, so that might have helped things along a little bit, make it more quick than it may have otherwise been, even more quick. But, yeah. So right now, getting to more present weather in solar cycle 25, the sun is coming off the maximum. We were down to only 38 sunspots yesterday. We're back up to 77, but they had 2 regions out of 4 that I didn't see any sunspots. There is one large sunspot on the disk now. That's pretty much about it. One other sunspot that's a pinpoint prick, or whatever you want to call it. According to this solar scientist, he feels the sun is on its last thread, and that the dense plasma in the very near future is going to disappear. Solar wind's going to shut down. The sun's going to go into hibernation for a very long period, perhaps. We shall see if he's right or not. I'm not saying he's going to be right or he's going to be wrong. We don't know for sure, but it is a valid hypothesis as far as I'm concerned. So the sun is beginning to definitely come off the max. And again, CO2 levels, I'm not sure, again, as I stated earlier, if NOAA is telling us the total truth about that. They've lied about a lot of other things. I mean, if the CO2 levels have stabilized, would NOAA tell us that? Would they tell us on the chart, or would they hide it? If, say, CO2 levels flatlined and stopped increasing, would NOAA inform us of that, or would they keep saying it's going up? Because if carbon dioxide levels, say, have plateaued, it would defeat all the agenda on man causing the CO2 levels to increase as activities, and it being a greenhouse gas, that we're going to be all doomed because of it. It would deflate all of that if CO2 levels, say, leveled off, because perhaps the ocean stopped warming. In line with this call with Janet Morency, and I think there were 40 other people on it at the beginning of the call. 20 were still on it when it ended. 20 people listening in to the conversation. I was one of them. Again, as I said in the beginning of the video, they claim that CO2 levels are governed by ocean temperature, acidification, and not by man. And that the oceans contain a lot more CO2 than man could ever put into the atmosphere by far. Locked up in not only oceans, but the rocks. And that the oceans are actually an emitter of CO2. When they get warmer, they emit more CO2 to restore the balance of the atmosphere and the total ecosystem. So again, time will tell what happens, but I don't trust the data from NOAA. You know, when I saw that discrepancy between the book and their current chart, in that there was a discrepancy of 5 parts per million. That was back from 1974. What is the discrepancy now? So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm going to try to furnish the name of that YouTube channel for anybody who's interested in learning more about plasma and the mechanics of all this, as to why we could be on the brink of, the sun going in hibernation. If anybody's interested in learning more about why that's the case, I'm going to recommend that you watch that channel. I'll be back soon.